Out in the West, it is often heard said, the only good paint horse is one that is dead. But to rules, there's exceptions, I've got this to show. So take a deep seat, watch this paint filly go. Miss Alito, swing to and fro, watching them doggies wherever they go. First to the right, then to the left, always in front of them doing her best. It was down at Fort Worth at the big fat stock show. Bob first had the chance to watch this filly go. He walks right up to him, says, "How much will you take?" They said, "Enough money for the rent and a steak." Now Bob says, "I'll take her, but now let me see. Will you take a check, boys, upon the cross B?" The boys said, "No, Bob, it's cash that we want." So he gets the 2,000 and he pays them right off. Miss Alito, swing to and fro, watching them doggies wherever they go. First to the right, then to the left, always in front of them doing her best. Now watch her go to him, she does it so neat, you'd think that this filly had brains in her feet. She's always a-watching and seems to outguess anything she's working, she's doing her best. Now people will tell you it takes time to show a good cutting pony the right place to go. But this little paint filly just naturally knows more than most horses, she's just 2 years old. Miss Alito, swing to and fro, watching them doggies wherever they go. First to the right and then to the left, always in front of them doing her best. If it's good cutting horses you're wanting to see, go out north of Roswell upon the Cross B. Miss Alito and Powder and Old Yeller Cat, the best cutting horses the West has seen yet. There's some that like the city grass that's curried smooth and green, theaters strangling collars, wagons run by gasoline. For me it's horse and saddle, every day without a change, and the desert sun's blazing on 100 miles of rain. Riding, desert rippling in the sun, mountains blue along the skyline, who could envy anyone when we're riding? When my feet is in the stirrups and my horse is on the bust, and his hoofs a flashing lightning from a cloud of golden dust, and the bawling of the cattle is coming down the wind, then a finer life than riding would be mighty hard to find. Riding, splitting long cracks through the air, stirring up a baby cyclone, ripping up the prickly pear when we're riding. Don't need no art exhibit when the sunset does her best, painting everlasting glory on the mountains to the west. And your Opry looks so foolish as the nightbird starts his tune, and the desert's silver mounted by the touches of the moon. Riding, who could envy kings and czars? When the coyotes down the valley, they're singing to the stars when we're riding. When my earthly trail is ended and my final bacon curled, and the last great roundup's finished at the home ranch of the world. Don't want no harps nor halos, robes nor other dressed up things, just ride those starry ranges on a pinto horse with wings. A-riding, nothing I like half so well as a-rounding up the sinners that have wandered out of hell when we're riding. Just a-riding, desert rippling in the sun. Mountains blue along the skyline, who could envy anyone when we're riding? Say, Pard, have you sighted a schooner? Oh, hitting the Santa Fe Trail. They may be here Monday or sooner, with a water cake tied on the rail. There's Daddy and Ma on the Musée, and somewheres along by the way is a tow-headed gal on a Pinto. She's a-jangling for old Santa Fe. Yo-ho, just a-jangling for old Santa Fe. I saw her ride down the Arroyo way back in the Arkansas sand, and a smile like an acre of sunflowers had a little brown quirt in her hand. She straddled her Pinto so airy and rode like she carried the mail, and her eyes near set fire to the prairie alongside the Santa Fe Trail. Yo-ho, alongside the Santa Fe Trail. I know a gal on the border that I'd ride to El Paso to sight. I'm acquainted with the high step in order. I sometimes kiss some gals goodnight, but they're all just ruffles and beatin' and afternoon tea by the pail, compared to the kind of stampedin' that we got on the Santa Fe Trail. Yo-ho, that we got on the Santa Fe Trail. I don't know her name and the prairie. When it comes to one gal, it's pretty wide, and it's shorter from hell to hilarity than it is on this Santa Fe ride. I'll make it to Cedars by sundown. I'll camp somewhere down in a swale, and I'll come on a gal on a Pinto alongside the Santa Fe Trail. Yo-ho, alongside the Santa Fe Trail. I am a wandering cowboy, from ranch to ranch I roam. At every ranch where welcome, I make myself at home. 2 years I worked for the double L, one for the old Boro. I drifted west from Texas to the plains of Mexico. There I met up with a rancher who was looking for a hand. Springtime greened the valleys, I was burning the Long X brand. I worked on through the summer, then early in the fall, over the distant ranges came that old familiar call. Yo-de-dee, yo-de-dee-de-dee, de-dee-de-dee. Drifted out to Arizona to ride for Uncle Bob, tailing up the weak ones on a winter feeding's job. but the ranch camp grew too lonely, with never a rest or change. So I saddled up one morning and I lit for a distant range. One night in old Wyoming, when the stars hung bright and low, I lay in my tarp a-dreaming of a far-off home rancho, where the cottonwood leaves are whispering in the evening soft and low. 'Tis there my heart's returning, and homeward I must go. Yo-de-dee-oh-de-dee-dee-dee-dee. I was laying around just a-spending my time, out of a job I ain't holding a dime. A feller steps up and he says, I suppose that you're a bronc fighter by the looks of your clothes. You figures me right, I'm a good one, I claim. Do you happen to have any bad ones to tame? He says, I got a bad one to buck. For a throwing good riders, he's had lots of luck. He says this old pony, he ain't never been rode, that the boys that gets on him is bound to get throwed. Well, I gets all excited and I ask what he pays to ride that old pony for a couple of days. He offers a 10-spot, I says, I'm your man, 'cause the bronc never lived that I couldn't fan. The horse never lived, no, he never drew breath that I couldn't ride till he starved plumb to death. I don't like to brag, but I got this to say, that I ain't been piled in many a day. Says he, get your saddle, I'll give you a chance. So I gets in his buckboard, we drifts to the ranch. I stays until morning, and right after Chuck, I steps out to see if this outlaw can buck. Down in the horse corral, standing alone, was this old caballo, the strawberry roan. His legs was all spavined, he's got pigeon toes, little pig eyes and a big Roman nose, little pin ears that touch at the tip, and a double square iron was stamped on his hip. And ewe-neck ain't old with a long lower jaw, I can see with one eye he's a regular outlaw. I puts on my spurs and I'm sure feeling fine, I turns up my hat and I picks up my twine. I throws that loop on him, and well I know then that before he gets rode I will sure earn my 10. I gets my blinds on him and it sure was a fight. Next comes my saddle, I screws it down tight. Then I piles on him, I raises the blind. I'm right in his middle to see him unwind. Well, he pulls his old neck and I guess he unwound, for he seems to quit living down there on the ground. He goes up towards the east, comes down toward the west. To stay in his middle, I'm a-doing my best. He sure is frog walking and heaves a big sigh. He only lacks wings, what to be on the fly. Well, he turns his old belly right up toward the sun. He sure is a sun-fishing son of a gun. He's the worst bucker I've seen on the range. He can turn on a nickel and he'll give you some change. Well, while he's a-bucking, he squeals like a shoat, and I'll tell you that pony has sure got my goat. I claim that no foolin' this bronc could sure step. I'm still in my saddle and a-building a rep. Well, he hits on all fours and he suns up his side, and I don't see how he keeps from a-shedding his hide. I loses my stirrup and also my hat. I'm a-grabbing for leather, I'm as blind as a bat. With a phenomenal jump, he goes up on high, and I'm setting on nothing way up in the sky. Then I turns over twice and I comes back to earth, just a-sittin' there a-cussin' the day of his birth. Then I know that there's horses that I ain't able to ride, and some of 'em's livin', they haven't all died. But I'll bet's all my money that the man ain't alive, can stay with that bronc till he makes his high dive.